Everyone, and welcome to the Microsoft Power BI UK user group. I'm your host, Leon Gordon, and we're back for another fantastic session whereby we can come together as a community and learn more about Power BI together. As you all know, we want this to be a fantastically interactive session, so the Q&A will be open. So please do let us know where you're dialing in from, and please do ask questions throughout. In today's session, we have a topic which I'm sure you're all looking forward to. It's the world's fastest DAX using quick DAX templates with Mike Carlo. I'll just give you a brief background around Mike before I hand you over to him for the session. So Mike is very passionate about data and analytics, and he spent a massive amount of time learning Power BI. Through the learning process, he felt that others may also be interested. Thus, he created a website and knowledge repository for all things Power BI, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's powerbi.tips, and his site is uniquely set up for people to read and learn more about data modeling and visualizations within Power BI. So without any further ado, I will hand you over to Mike for this session.
All right, excellent. So I'm a big guy around, I love demos. I'm not big on presentations or slide decks. And I really disagree with the idea that Power BI is the PowerPoint for data. Power BI is the place for data. I don't like PowerPoint, so I don't do very much of it. So that being said, I'm gonna do just a quick introduction. I do a lot of little things across the interwebs. And so for those of you who have heard of powerbi.tips, that's the website that I created. I now co-manage it with Seth Bauer, who's another Microsoft MVP. We also run a podcast with 3 MVPs, myself, Seth Bauer, and Tommy Puglia, where we run the Explicit Measures podcast. So if you are loving data and you want to hear more about it, it's kind of a fun, engaging. We tease each other a lot. We just enjoy the data part of it, and these are what we would call those water cooler kind of conversations. We just sit around, talk around Power BI. So we'd love for you to engage with us. We run the Power BI Tips podcast every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. So I know that's earlier for my friends across the pond. In weird times, potentially you may or may not catch it, but you can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. So really good. We're getting a lot of great engagement. People love the channel and love what we're talking about and discussions there. So feel free to engage in the discussion. We're doing a live show during those times. And if you want to catch me specifically, right, if you like what we talk about here today, if you have questions or kind of want to engage with me on the social medias, these are my social channels. I'm available on Power BI Tips or at Mike R. Carlo on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn and also on our YouTube channel. So we're kind of a bit of everywhere. So please follow us and, we can get in touch. So things that Power BI Tips does. If you guys don't use these yet, I just say this one because this is a lot of general community-based tools that we produce. We want people to try things out. There's some free stuff. There's some stuff you can pay for, but a majority of what we produce for the community is all 100% free. One of the tools we'll talk about today is Power BI Business Ops. It's basically a collection of external tools that you can go use for Power BI Desktop. So there are, 50, 60 different external tools you can go get your hands on, and there's more coming out every month. It's hard to keep track of where everything is. So we built a tool that we go work with people who build external tools, and we integrate them into this central installation program. Install one tool, you get all the external tools, and you can add them as you need to into Power BI Desktop when you want. So check that out. It's a tool that we have. We also do Power BI themes, so themes.powerbi.tips. We have a gallery of colors you can go grab. We build the model JSON file or the PBI file, so it's PBID is the data set file. We build those connection files. We also have a version of Charticulator that we like to use, so charts.powerbi.tips. And we also sell and give away free scrims and layouts, basically templates to help you build your reports better and faster. So these are all the kind of the surface area of the tools that we do and produce. And if you're so inclined, we have some great merchandise and swag, so you can go find us at swag.powerbi.tips. We have the shirt that I'm wearing today, as well as other random stuff that are just fun things about DAX and interesting things out there you can go grab. So anyways, go check out some of the merch. If you like what we're doing, go pick up 1 or 2 items, maybe for a friend or a colleague as well. All right, with this, I'm going to ditch this. So I'm going to get out of the presentation mode, and we will jump right into what is DAX Template Generator. So I first feel like it's relevant for us to just talk about what is DAX doing. So let me pull up a quick model here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go open up a very generalized star model here. So let me grab this over here, copy this down to my desktop. So this is a Power BI data model. It has a star schema to it. So we've got our proper facts and dimension tables applied to this data model. And I just want to generally talk about what is a measure? What should we be doing with a measure? And how should that look and be overlaid into a data model? So I think it's important for us to understand just the core portions of like, what is DAX doing? And then we can talk about how do we make a general template that could make making these DAX equations into different parts of your data model repeatable, very easy to consume. Okay. So let's go quickly look at the data model here. This is what our data model looks like. And let me turn on zoom it here so we can kind of see what's going on. Very simple data model. We've got our dimensions across the top and we have our fact table down at the bottom. So the idea here is your fact table pretty much has no text columns in it. It's just numbers and calculations. All the dimensions have been pulled out to the outsides of the table. We go back into our data model and we'll go over here to the right-hand side and we're going to look at all the different measures that we have today. These measures are very basic in nature, but if you imagine all the things that are happening in the community, and if you spend any time in DAX, there is likely a lot of opportunity to improve or repeatability of your DAX statements. Now, this is a great example. You'll notice all of these DAX statements here. I keep using the wrong one. There we go. All of these DAX statements are sum of something. Okay, so if I click on one of the measures here, and I'm going to zoom in really big, hopefully, there we go. We can see that this DAX statement is just doing a simple sum on a column that is a numerical column. So very common, very repeatable. This is something you would do often over and over again. There are other calculations you may do, like a divide statement, or you may add some kind of protections for a column where you do a test. Is this column actually a value? And then if it's using some variables in your DAX equations. So if we deconstruct this slightly, again, this is a super basic example here. There's a couple of things that we could parameterize inside this creation of DAX. One parameter would be, well, what's the name of the DAX expression going to look like? That's one potential parameter we could build. Another potential parameter could be, what is the table name? So where does the cost of goods column come from? So table name could be potentially a parameter. The column name as well could be a parameter. Or you could have a parameter that defines the table and the column name. So it's all kind of bundled into one. Okay, so looking at this core concept, we can then, what I developed with Dieter, who is a gentleman out of, I think it's France, has this really great tool called Power BI Side Tools. So this is one of the external tools, and I'm going to go kind of run through his tool here real quick. So how do you get this thing to work, right? This is what we're talking about here in the DAX generator. This is an external tool. So let me just quickly go over here to his website. So this is Dieter and what he's built on his tools. This is the DAX generator. So it's a tool that allows you to create a templatized parameters for a DAX statement, and then you can reuse that template over and over again on many different models. There's also a lot of other portions to his tool, a DAX debugger. He has a DAX parser that will parse out the DAX and show you exactly how the DAX is constructed and where the variables are being used. He also has an easy export to Excel button in this tool. So there's a lot of other things that this does. We're really going to hone in on just one part of his tool. You can go down to the bottom of his website. You can download the file directly from here if you like, or if you want, I'm also going to point out business ops. So business ops or business operations is basically a tool made for the business. It's a single installer that you can use on your desktop. And it essentially, let's see if I still have it installed. I was working on it yesterday. Power BI Business Ops. It is a tool installer that runs on your program, and this is what Business Ops looks like. It's an external tool. It kind of runs, it's an installer that you run, but you can add any number of external tools. You can add a shortcut command to DAX.guide, or you can add a shortcut command to Daniel Okier's Tabular Editor or Tabular Editor 3, or the metadata translator, another tool made by the Microsoft product team. And by ticking this box, you can then add that tool directly into your application. One said application here is I scroll in here it is, DAX generator. So you can go ahead and directly add DAX generator as a shortcut right from Power BI Desktop into your tool. Today, I'm just going to use the Power BI Side Tools tool by itself, just to illustrate what we're doing here today. All right, let's make some templates. Let's grab some templates and let's start using them here. So in this data model, we can assume we have some columns that are in the fact table, and we have some dimensions around the tables as well. So I'm going to go over to External Tools. We'll click on Power BI Side Tools. This will bring up the little application. This actually connects to my local hosted model of the data model. And we can see right here, the bottom portion of this tells me it's connected to my local data model. So this is the file that I've opened, and the port is 54370. So it's an easy way to see what's going on there. We're going to click on the More button, and we'll click on DAX Generator. This will bring up another application window. And you can see here, I've already loaded a bunch of templates, which you will see how and why I did that in a little bit. We'll go over that in a minute here. But these are all the DAX templates that are available. And these are all available to you right now today on GitHub. You can go look at these templates that are out there. The community is providing the templates into this. I think we have over 100 plus templates now from that website. We're also encouraging you guys to make your own templates, and I'll show you how to do that towards the end of the session. All right. Good, no questions at this point. All right, I'm gonna keep going. All right, so let's just do some simple calculations here. I'm going to, do I have one here that does, here we go, totals, a simple sum. We're gonna use that template, okay? So I'm gonna click on the template, a simple sum, and what the tool does for you now is it tries to help you pick out information about your data model and aligns what you're going to name things in the measure or the measure you're going to create to what's already in your existing data model. So Michael's pause or side note here, right? When we have in Power BI Desktop, we have this feature called quick measures. A quick measure allows you to select data elements from the data model, and then the measure is quickly created, a single measure from the quick measures gallery. One thing I'm very disappointed about was it was never opened up. The community could not create their own quick measures or their quick measure items to be added to the gallery. There was a gallery at PowerBI.com, but it had to be integrated into the Microsoft product to be able to do those things. So the community never actually got the ability to write their own DAX. So that's what this project came out of. When Microsoft opened up the ability to edit the data model dynamically in Power BI Desktop, that opens the world for anyone to build any kind of external tool to quickly generate their own DAX. Okay, so now back to my example. At the very top here, we can see we have the name of the measure, which is called sum of column, and we have the table column or the column name right here called table underscore column. These are parameters that we're going to use to inject data into our data model. So let's just call this, I'm going to call this, as you're looking at my data model here, I'm going to say this is going to be called total profit. And we're going to go click on this green box here. And the green box is really cool because it goes back to the data model. It grabs all the tables that are there and allows you to select some element from the data model and bring it to the measure. So we're going to go here to star model. Here's the table. We're going to go looking for the column called profit. So we're going to go to the fact table, the column called profit, and we're going to do a sum on top of that column. With this in the application here, we actually have some additional things here like instructions. So the author can say how to use this. There's multiple steps. The user can actually add, hey, this sum column should be a number, a decimal, or an integer, right? There's different things you may want to require about a certain parameter. Oh, excuse me. Let me get a drink of water here. Ooh, my throat is dried out. All right. You can also see in here the full template. The template has the column, the example of what we're building. So we have the sum and then the table column parameter being injected into the template so we can see what's being built. Again, this is a verbatim, a repeat of what we already saw in the data model. All right, so now moving forward, we're going to hit the generate button. The generate button allows us to go into the model. So now we can see it's going to generate from the parameters we gave the DAX generator. It will auto-generate DAX and then add a little section down here for comments. How was this made? Who made it? Where did it come from? So that way you can kind of go back and reference it. You can also see here in this one, I actually added a little note here that says, hey, this one's using a function called sum. So here's a link, here's a URL link to go learn more about what that function is doing. So one thing I think is very interesting here is we can actually add rich documentation into your measures and tell people, when you're working on DAX measures as a team, some person's going to have more knowledge than other people, and you may need references or links or internal documentation, whatever you want. You can provide said links inside the measures themselves once, and it repeats it for every single time you use the measure. So now we're talking like efficiency, and this is what makes my heart sing, right? If I do it once, I'll learn it. If I do it twice, I'll document it. If I do it a third time, I automate it. And this is huge for automation inside DAX. You have the ability of making standard patterns that your organization does, and you can repeatedly in multiple models copy in the same bit of code. I think that's kind of huge. Maybe undervalued by people, but I think it's a big win for when we start talking about building DAX things. All right. Assuming we've got everything done, we should be able to hit create or update. It's going to ask me which data table do I need to put the data in. So I'm going to go here to my fact tables sales, and you'll see here at the top, the measure for total profit has been created in the table faxed sales. So it's going to tell me where the measure was created. And if you were quick enough to see it before I zoomed in, as we did that, the total profit measure was automatically created. It's already there. So we've done it. We picked our column. We had an example code. Let's close out of this. We'll go back over here and we're going to click on total profit, and boom, there we go. All of the code that we just had has now been injected directly into the data model. Now, this is cool for one measure that has a simple sum, but we all know DAX is way more complex than this and has to be more nuanced than just a simple sum. So I'm just going to prove to you that this works. So I'm going to go here to the dim product table. I'm going to grab product and I'm going to grab my total profit onto the table, and boom, now it works. So now we've been able to inject a template of a simple sum into the model. One thing I think that's going to be very interesting here, now it's not quite out yet. I believe we're working, so Dieter is working on another method to this, and this is where, stay tuned, I think early 2020 is going to be very interesting to what will happen here in the future. We made a template that had one item, one measure. But imagine you had a column that you wanted to add 4, 5, 6 different measures about the same column, right? Let's say I'm reading something about statistics, right? I want to be able to make on the numerical column called profit, I want to see the min, the max, the average, the sum. There may be multiple measures I need to add for the same column. So this tool, we're working on it right now, which will allow you to be able to add multiple measures at the same time. So that's going to be really cool when we get there. We're not quite there yet. We're like really close on some of the testing phase of things, but I think that's going to be very close in the near future where we're going to be able to do that and dynamically add multiple measures. Okay, all that being said, let's go back over to another example. This time, I want to do one more example here, and we'll get into, this is something, so let me just take a moment here. There are tools out there today that let you add measures. There are other tools, most of those tools block the feature for you to add tables. So today, you really can't modify a PBIX file and add a table unless you use unsupported features like in Tabular Editor. It's kind of Microsoft needs to harden Power BI Desktop a bit more to accept those changes, but this tool allows you to do it because you can do it technically. So we go here, more, we'll go to DAX Generator. Now, again, I'm going to pick on Leon here just a bit. Leon, do you use date tables inside your data models, and do you make them out of DAX, or do you go out of Power Query and M? Like, what's your mix there?
So I'm quite fortunate. So yes, I do use a date or a calendar table. Generally, we take it from the DWH, so our derived data layer. If that wasn't the case, It would be a 50-50 between DAX and M, dependent on the end client and their skill set.
Okay, good. You know what you are? I can tell you're a consultant because you said the answer like spot on. I love the. So, I'll step back here a moment. Date tables are critical for your data models, and if you're not using a date table to define the date dimensions of your model, you're probably needing to fix your model a bit. So we'll say that. But that being said, you can make date tables one of two ways. You can do it in DAX. And SQL BI has an incredible DAX statement that has every single thing you would need to know, calendar days, holidays, all kinds of things all written out in a DAX formula, which is amazing. So that's a DAX-driven way of making a date table, or you can go into Power Query and make an M-driven way of writing a date table. I prefer, for my own preference, is I prefer the date tables inside DAX because if I ever want to update that table or modify it, I can do so using external tools. I don't have to go back into the Power Query or the M and reload things that way. I could do it using a third-party tool to update those tables or definitions. All right, that being said, we can go ahead and automate the loading of those DAX tables. We can go find what date tables are out there, and we can have those automatically added to us for our Gregorian date calendars. So here's some examples of some date calendars. And here's one for using the calendar auto date. So this one has a very simple calculated table name. You just call it calendar dates. Here are the instructions. Enter the name of the date calendar. Super simple. But the template here writes this bit of DAX. This is the DAX that you use. So it does a generate calendar auto, which goes at your data model and looks at all date ranges that it can find, and then defines the day value, the date of the day, and then gives you like a increment, the number of the day, month, and year. So it builds 3 more columns. So if we hit generate on this one, hopefully this will work as well. We'll hit create. Now I'm going to see if I can let you see it here on the model side as well. So if you look to the right, you'll see this hopefully up here. If I hit create or update, it'll then note it, and then boom, there it is. Calendar dates has been added into the model. This is just one date calendar, but you can imagine we have other date calendars that might have more elaborate versions of what's going on. So we can go here and we can say year to date using an existing measure. So here's the documentation on this one. The year to date of this existing measure is calculating something. Oh, this is, sorry, just kidding. This is a measure. I'm sorry. I'm looking for another year to date with measure, some measure, previous year to date. Let's go to Gregorian date calendars here. Let's go date dimensions. Okay, here's a better one. So this is another date table. Okay, this date table has standard calendar with it. So here are the instructions. Construct your basic date dimension. The first day of the week is an integer where Sunday equals 0, Monday equals 1. So you can see which fiscal month. These are some default values that have already been applied for you. And then you can say the fact date field, the date field in the fact table that contains your dates in which you want to base the calendar. So this example lets you pick a column that has dates in it. And from those dates, it'll grab a min and a maximum and let you auto build off of that date table. So if we go back into the template here, you can see there's a lot more going on. Okay, our other example wasn't good enough. This example is clear as to why I would want to use a DAX template to build the DAX statement correctly initially and then reuse it multiple times. Because this stuff is like, you don't want to write this every time. And I've seen people today go to like OneNote or have a text file, or there are patterns you use in DAX. People copy out their DAX statements and put them somewhere, but it's not reusable. You have to like re-understand or reconfigure that stuff in your mind. How do you rebuild that new DAX statement? Again, a date table is a great example, right? I copy the code over, it breaks initially because it's wrong or there's a date column that's missing. I then have to go back in and figure out, okay, what broke, which columns are missing, and the auto highlighting works to a degree, but man, I don't want to write all this code again. I just want to have it there for me. So we're going to call this table dim date. Actually, I don't have it. Yeah, I have a dim. I'm just going to call this, I'm going to rename it here slightly. I'm going to call it dimension date, and then I'm just going to go testing. Just that way it's different than what's in the model right now. Now I'm going to go pick the date fact field. So we're going to go down to our fact table, and we have a column called date. So we'll click on the date column, and you'll notice right there, it's going to inject that parameter into the series called date field. Okay, I'll hit generate again. This is the code that's now been generated, and you can see in a couple places here, it's actually replaced the fact sales table for me. All right, fingers crossed. Hopefully the DAX works. It's been a while since I've tested some of these. So let's create or update. The dim date testing has been created. So we go over here to the dim date testing table. We can see that it's there. There's my code. It looks like it ran, no problem. Looks like we did everything correct. I'm going to hit refresh now because tables do require a refresh for it to recalculate them. So I'll hit refresh now. And there we go. We now have 2 new date tables with code, and all I had to do was basically select a couple columns and stuff was working. So this is where I think, you're now starting to see the point where I could see the build some common DAX calculations, right? I do a percent change year over year. I do some things you're going to reuse over and over again. And when you see yourself writing that common DAX statement over and over and over again, this is a great tool to build that in, because now I can just go reuse that same code library over and over again. Okay. Let's go in a little bit further here, and let's just make sure that this all worked correctly. So I'm going to minimize this. We'll go to a new table here, and I'm going to grab the date testing. We're going to grab a date column. Yep, that works. Month, quarter. There we go. Month looks like it should not be a date. Oh, looks like we need to do some do not summarize and call this one a fixed date, whole number. Yeah, okay. So there is some data type things you might have to adjust there. So some of it was automatically picking up that this was a month, and in fact, it is not just a month. It needed a date table definition for that. So no worries there, but you can see now that the date table is actually doing this. And once you have it in the model, you can now go back through here into your data model and readjust and now link this new table that you created. You can now link them directly to what's in your main fact table. So now you have the ability of reconnecting your data connections and using them to define a new date table. I don't think we have any questions.
We do have a couple, Mike, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we have a question coming in from David Pruitt, and they ask, what about a measure that feeds from another measure? How would that work? So, for example, if you defined gross margin, which equals sales minus COGS, how would you reference the previous measure as dependency as such?
Oh, you are so smart. Okay, so there is this so I'm going to hold that question off just for a moment. The answer is this thing is totally extensible, and you can define measures or columns. So what I was doing previously was I was defining a column and bringing that in. You can actually, the spec that we use to define the template, there's a lot of flexibility in there. We try to think about all of the edge cases of what you can use and what you can't use. So let me go find another template. I'm gonna see if I can make it work. It may not work great, perfect as the example I have here for my data model, but you can select tables, you can select columns, and you can select other measures. So if you have another measure in the data model, you can select that and reuse it in your template. So let's go find one of those. Great question. It's like I paid you to do this stuff, right? Let's see here. Okay, here's a good example, I think. Measure with force to dash. Now, I don't know if I have it. I might have to make up some data here so that this thing works correctly. But let's read the instructions on this one. This will force a value to be 0 when a measure has returned a blank value. Okay, so this happens when you have 2 data tables where one data table has records and the other one does not. And you try and run a calculation on it. And so in certain cases, when a data table, it runs blank values, it won't show the data. So let me give you an example here. Hopefully I can do this right. If I go into this date table, let's go into our other date table. I'm not going to use this one. Oh boy, man, this session's getting deep already. We're like in the debugging DAX to like the nth degree here. So I hope this answers the question. So we're going to go into I'm going to get rid of. Let's go to the dim date table. I'm going to bring in some dates. Go back here. I don't know why I drilled through there accidentally. All right, let's do another one. we have here our date table. So I'm going to bring in a date. And now you'll notice here in the data model for this date table is starting on 9/1, meaning the data set we have, again, this is the way I built the data model. I made the date table very narrow on this in this example, right? I made another date table called calendar auto, okay? That's just the calendar dates one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the date column here. I'm going to match it to this other one. It's going to say these two things are dates. I'm going to say, yep, make the relationship active. I'll hit OK, and we're happy. So now I have another date table, okay? This being said, if I grab my new date from my new date table called calendar dates, and I drop my date field, you'll see that the data in this table starts at 1/1. Okay, the reason being is the date table has a continuous set of dates from January through December for any date range you have. That's what Calendar Auto does. Calendar Auto builds full calendar years of dates for anything in your data model to make it very easy for you to model on top of. This is interesting though, because when I have the date table attached in this way, it will show me every single date. Now, when a value returns blank, it actually removes that record from the data table. So now if I add my total profit calculation I did earlier, you'll see that all those other dates I had starting at January have now disappeared. That's because the calculation called total profit returns a blank value, and therefore Power BI chooses to remove those dates from the date calendar, even though the date calendar has all the dates for all of time. Really cool because it helps you make your really efficient data models and very efficient reporting, but sometimes you don't want that. In this case, maybe I want to show dash dash or blank or zero value when there's no data. All right, so we go back over to our measure now. The setup has been made. We'll go back to our measure here, and the measure name is measure input force 2. Now you'll see there's a parameter here. Oops, try that again. There's two parameters. The measure name, which is called measure input, that's the value of the measure's name itself. And you'll see that that parameter also is used in the title of the measure itself. So what this can do is it can auto name your measures as well. So it can parameterize not only the measure you're using in the value, but you can also parameterize the name of the measure. Again, I'm getting so excited. This is just super cool. Okay. Let's go grab some stuff here. So let's go to measure input. Let's go grab our same thing we did before, total profit. So I'm going to grab total profit and I'm going to hit generate. What this does now is it changes total profit. It adds it to the name of the measure. It also adds a variable. Oops. And inside that variable, it says, this is the measure I'm going to consume. I'm going to consume an existing measure and make that part of my variable. And then down below, this is the output, right? And if you can read the DAX pretty well, if the test case is blank, then return a text string of dash dash. If test case is not blank, return the value of test case. So now I'm toggling between the data types of this number. This measure will actually be text or numbers. All right, so I'm going to hit create and update here. And when I do that, it's going to ask me where to put it. I'm going to put it in my fact sales again. And there we go. My new measure has been created. So now I will close this. And now we will use our new measure, total profit now forced to dash dash. So in my same data table, I'm going to actually copy this over here so we have an extra copy. Here's my new data table. And I have the existing calculation of total profit, which works as expected. Those blank values are being hidden from the visual. Perfect. That's what we want. And if I add my new measure to this, you will see, boom, I now have this dash 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 on every single row of data. And that's because there is no data in my fact table to support that calculation. And now the if statement is kicking in and turning it into a dash dash. So sometimes you need this on categorical values or whatever you want. Sometimes this is relevant. Okay. That's another measure that I use a lot when I'm doing reporting for people. Sometimes I'll turn it on, sometimes I'll turn it off. And that's, the naming convention that I have here is also listed here as well. I hope that answered the question. So whoever asked the question, let me know if that answered your question about the measure thing. I went off on quite a tangent there to explain why I would want to use that measure, but I hope that answers yes, we can use measures as well. Any other questions that we should look at?
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. I think there's a couple that we could probably jump into now.
Okay.
So a question coming in from Hisham, and he asks, you mentioned that you have some new developments heading our way for 2022 to include multiple measures. And he asks, is it something similar to a calculation group? So to summarize, will it reduce the number of DAX measures being used?
Good question. So what we're doing right now in the automation, we are automating general DAX creation. I believe we are working on right now. So we're going to work on automating the ability to add calculation groups as a template. Okay, so calculation groups are its own thing, and calculation groups are awesome because it basically, oh geez, I'm going to see if I can explain this simply. So to answer your question directly, this is not calculation groups. This is not dealing with calculation groups. We're not making an equivalent of what a calculation group is. However, a calculation group could be a template that we produce in the future, and we can add calculation groups into data models as a template. And I can't imagine like how calculation groups aren't easy to do. And once you figure one out, you want to reuse it everywhere you can. So I could very much see in the future having a really good, robust list of calculation groups that you may want to use and have those auto-generated to give you a good starting point for where your DAX is going to begin. So yeah, it's not calculation groups. This is different, but I'm going to show you how to, what I'm going to talk about here is I'm going to add some new terminology called encoding. So we can encode a single measure or many measures in the same template script. And so we'll see that in a bit here where we can talk through how that's going to work.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. And just one last question from Dennis before we can move on.
Yeah.
Dennis asks, can I save in DAX Generator my own DAX templates?
Yes. So I have made, so the template generator is one part of a two-part tool that works here. So the DAX template generator takes a template and makes you DAX. How do you make the template, you would ask? Well, I have another tool for that. So I've made a brand new another tool that helps you build the templates, because it's the whole tool's useless if you can't make your own templates, right? I don't want to go consume everything else everyone else made. I need to make my own for what I need. So that's the next part of this talk. We're actually going to show you now, how do you build the templates and what do they look like? Cool, great question. Actually, that's a really good lead in. If there's not another question, I'll lead right into the next segment because that's actually a good lead in.
Yeah, that's fine. I think we can carry on. That's fine. Thanks.
Okay. Mike. All right. So let's open up one of these template things and figure out what's inside them. I just want to show you what's inside, and then I'm going to show you a tool how to generate them. So there's already a spec or a design specification on how these things work. So I'm going to go here to my desktop. I'm going to open up a file here. Oops, I'll hopefully open up the right one, not the wrong one. Go to my folders here, and I'm going to go into the learning area, and we're going to go into, let's just do a star scale. I'm going to open this JSON file. So everything in these templates are JSON. So again, everyone loves JSON because it's very programmatic. Yeah. It's not easy to read, and it's not easy to write. So that's why we have a tool. But in essence, this is what's happening. Inside these files, you have the name of the template at the top. You have this section called parameters, and this is all well defined in the specification that's published out on GitHub. So if you want to see how this is defined, we have a specification that you could use to handwrite this if you want, or build your own tool to build your own stuff. But the idea here is we have this parameter. So your parameter key is what defines the input parameter. And then your parameters are, am I adding a column? Am I adding a measure? Do I have a description? What's the display name? What do we want to call it when we display it in the UI? So all of the properties here define what is the parameter I'm going to use down below in the DAX statement. Down below here, we have this thing called encoding. I'm going to go here to, again, hopefully, there we go. In the encoding section, we have, this is where the DAX statement actually lives. And for those of you who write JSON or know what JSON is, you'll notice the encoding section is an array. It's an object array. So this means you can have many encodings or many codes or many DAX statements being made at once. So one template can make 4, 5, 6 DAX measures or tables, or make a table, then a measure. So we can start stacking these things together and start building multiple DAX elements all at one time. So we have other properties here, like this one, for example. We're going to create, for this one, we're creating a measure. So we're going to create a measure for here. And then in the middle here, we have what is the expression of that measure. So that here's a comment. There's a comment at the beginning here. And then there's a little statement at the end that tells you here's the variable. So you can start seeing where the DAX is injected here. And then we have a whole bunch of other like metadata that goes around the template, right? Who made the template? Are there any support URLs that go along with it? Are there any metadata tagging we want to use? What are the instructions and other fun stuff that come along with the template? Okay, I'm going to leave this whole JSON thing alone because we don't want to write this. This is not cool. But what we do want to write is we want a template tool that will help us build it. And so if you go over to dax.powerbi.tips, this is where we build the templates. It's going to make it really easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a DAX statement in desktop, and I'm going to translate it into a template. So because that's kind of how I work, right? I build the DAX statement, something that's going to work inside desktop, and then I'm going to translate it into what it could be done in a template form. So let's go over to desktop here. I'm going to try and move all my windows out of my way. Let's get rid of that. We don't need this guy anymore. Let's get rid of him. Minimize that. All right, let's go back to Power BI desktop. All right, let's just try and make up something here. We're just going to try and build some sort of calculation. Let's see if I can do something here. I'm going to try and do a year-to-date calculation live without referring to any documentation. So this may be risky. This may not be. So I'm going to go right-click on the fact sales table. I'm going to say new measure. I'm going to go in here, and this is going to be my year-to-date. And this is not really blown up here big. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Oh, year-to-date, and I think I can do here is YTD. Wow, that's formatted super awesome. Okay, so let's go with total YTD. There's my documentation on what it will be doing. We need some sort of expression. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to use a measure to inject this. So I'm going to put a space here. I'm going to go total profit like the one we made earlier. Let's go with total profit. And then we now need the list of dates. So I believe it needs the date column, I think. So hopefully I'll get this right. We'll go here to, I think we're going to go after, let's go just try calendar dates.date. See if that works. Well, it accepted it. Let's see if it actually ran. It is doing the full year to date for all dates. Oh, it's probably not what we want originally. It's actually, wrong date table. Let's go to a different date table. Yeah, okay. This is the errors of Michael trying to do these calculations. It's calculating the year to date for every single value and not blanking it out where it doesn't need to be there. So it's doing a weird, it looks like it's adding them together, but it's doing every single date field. Okay, it looks like it's kind of working. We'll just go with it. Not the principle of the data, the DAX statement. We just need some DAX that we're going to go start from an example for. All right, so good enough. So this is my formula. In my formula, I've got two parameters. I've got the name of it, which could be a parameter. We also have the total profit, which is a measure, and then we have this date calendar portion as well. So we kind of have three things we may want to adjust on this in the future. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the whole text of this measure. We're going to go over to dax.tips, dax.powerbi.tips, and we're going to call this year-to-date calculation is the name of the template. And then I'm going to add a description here. Uses the date table and calculates a year-to-date for a specified measure. Okay. Now what we do is we figure out what the actually, you know what? Before I go to parameters, I'm going to just put the code down here below before I need to copy paste stuff. So here I'm going to go to the expression formula. So this is in the encoding section where we're going to make the measure itself. We're going to paste this in here. And what I like to do, you can do it however you want. You can keep the equals. I like keeping the equal sign in the expression area because it makes sense. It kind of feels like Power BI desktop. So I'll cut the name of the measure. Oops, what am I doing? I'll cut the name of the measure out, Control X, and I'll put the name of the measure in the name of the object. So that's the name of what the measure will be called. Down below, we have the total year to date, and then here's how the formula comes out. So this is the formula we're going to be building. Now, I know I want to have two parameters, one for total profit and one for the calendar dates. So I want to total profit, I'll leave that for now. For parameter number 1, I'm going to put up here at the top, and I'm going to say parameter name, select a selected measure. That would be the parameter name that I'm going to call it. And then if you want to set it by default, like if you have a date column or something like that, you could actually leave a default value for that. Now, because we're selecting a measure, I don't think we need a default. This could be different in every single one's model. However, there are measures that would require like a number, a text string, something that defines a calculation inside that, and you can set default values for parameters here. So that's what that's for. You can add a description, select a measure from the data model that will be used to calculate. Actually, this is not select. This is actually this is the description of the parameter. So I'm going to get rid of this. Measure for the data model that will be used to calculate the year to date. Okay. So this data type, we're going to inject this. This is going to be technically a string value. So we would say this would be a string value. And then what do we want to select from the model? What do we need to grab? So this will be a measure. So we're going to select that this parameter is defined as a measure. This indicates back to DAX generator that says when you select this parameter, it will show you the data model, but it will only show you the measures in the data model. It won't show you all the column names. So that's good there. We have our parameter 1 at the very top here, so I'll copy that, Control C. And then what I'll do over here is I'll go over to total profit and I'll replace that. And I'll put parameter 1. Now, you'll see over here on the right-hand side, I have a little example builder. So what's happening is it's saying I named the thing selected measure. The selected measure is equal to parameter number 1. Down here in my formula, I see the total year to date equals parameter 1. And what it does in this example box, it shows you the outputted expression as if it had done the replacement. So it should give you exactly what it looks like. So this is just confirming that you've typed everything in correctly. The next thing is we need to add another parameter. So we'll go down here to the parameters plus button at the bottom. We're going to click this. By clicking that button, you'll now make parameter. Now I need to name it something else. So I'm going to go parameter 2. Now I'll make it the second parameter. And this parameter name will be date. Let's call it, this would be, technically it would be just a table and date. That's kind of what we're looking for. And you know what, if I want to make this even clearer, I'll go to the top here. I'll just say instead of selected measure, I'll just call it measure. I can even make it, yeah, that's good enough. Let's do measure. Okay. All right, so now here, by default, we're not going to have any default selections. This is the description. Select a date column from the model. And then here we would say this is going to be just a string value because it's just, you know, the name of the table. And now here we have options. So if I click this option here for table column, it will provide you the proper syntax for the table and the column information. Or I can just grab the table name or just the column name. So because when we look at our DAX statement down below, we can see that it's the date table and the date column. We actually want to select this first option called date column. And with that, we need to now replace our second parameter. So grab parameter number 2. And we will then re-inject that into our formula down below. Boom. So now I can look at my formula. I've easily parameterized my formula with 2 inputs. But then when I look over on the right-hand side, I can verify that my measure is in fact working correctly, right? This is the input stuff I'm going to produce. This is the output below. And with that, we're done. You can fill out a bunch of other metadata stuff. This is, you know, this is going to be, oh, actually, yeah, let me go down here real quick. We can add a description to the measure. So if you want to auto-generate this inside DAX, you could have that automatically populated. So I really like documenting my measures that I'm building. So I highly recommend adding this kind of stuff. Total year to date calculation. And then we could say, do you want to hide it by default? What kind of formatting do you want for it? Is it a general, a whole number, or decimal number? You know, it's a decimal number. Do you want to use the parentheses for negative values? No. 1000 separator? Yes. These are all optionals. You don't have to have them, but you can add them if you want. These are tags. These are, again, required items. So I need to go down here and say this is a, let's see here. This would be a total, year-to-date total. Authors is Mike Carlo. Let's say do amazing things. And then if you have any support URLs where this thing came from, you can actually add links. So that could be a URL, it could be a link, whatever you want. This is just an area for you to add that information. All done. Let's hit download. We now get a JSON file, which I will now open up. Oh, come on.
Mike, just while that opens up, I'm going to jump in with a question, if I may.
Yeah.
So with the DAX generator and going through the template options there, and some of the extended properties, in the future, do you envisage being able to set some of the extended metadata properties for measures like encoding hints, MDX attributes from a performance perspective?
Oh, that's a great question. I have not gotten that far into what we can add using the AMDO or the OLDB, whichever, all the libraries that come with the C# libraries. So I would imagine if we can edit those properties inside those data models with the AMOD modifications, so again, being able to modify, we could definitely add it. Right now, I don't think we're looking at that. Right now, we're trying to work on like multiple encodings and some simpler things. But yeah, we could probably definitely do some encoding hints and other things there as well that would help enhance like table creation. Or I don't think you do those hints on measures, right? You do those on like tables and things or table columns.
Yeah, so table columns it would be.
Yep. So we don't have those things today, but doesn't mean we can't have them in the future, I think.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So this is our yucky JSON that we don't want to look at. So it produced everything. We have a format here. Good enough, right? We're done. So let's go figure out how we load this into our templates. So we have our template. I downloaded it to my desktop right here. I'll go back over to the DAX generator here. And so what I'll do here is I'm going to go add a whole bunch of files here. Minimize this. I'm going to go add this file. If I just click and drag it into the window, it will automatically add it. And right here at the very bottom, this is added my new calculation, the year-to-date calculation. So that's where that comes from. You can automatically see it reads the template file just as I wrote it. So the measure name is called year-to-date. And I'm going to call this year-to-date like test because I want to make sure that it's different than what I had before. Next, it's going to ask me to go grab a measure from the data model. I'll click that, and there we go. There's my data model. And this is, again, it was very important that I delineated that I was selecting a measure because I am only able to see from the model. I can't select the tables. I can only select the measures that are inside the model right now. So this measure name will be now total profit. And then what we can do is we can then select the date table or the table and column combination from that as well. We'll go in here. We'll go now. It's looking for all the elements that are tables and columns. So we'll go back down to our fact sales. And this is going to be different. I'm going to change how we're building the formula. Previously, we used our dim date table. In this case, I'm going to use the date column from the fact sales table. So I'll click date. And then with that, I'll click generate. And there we go. All the code has been generated for me. It's automatically injected all the information in there. And it looks like I might have done something. Why is it doing that extra replacement? Hold on. Let's go look at the instructions. Template, total year to date. It might be over replacing my year to date. I might have named something funny there. So let me just do this. That fixes it. Generate. Look at that. See, it took Mike test and replaced it with that and in the total year to date. So I know the function is total year to date. So I'm going to fix it right here real quick. Total YTD. So apparently you don't want to name things the same way they're named inside inside functions that DAX gives for you. All right. So hopefully all that's correct. I'll hit create or update. We're going to put it in our fact sales. The measure has been created. All right. Oh, it's saying a syntax error. Profit is incorrect. So we'll see what it does. Did I do wrong? I probably made my template wrong. Go back over to Power BI Desktop. And it did not add my measure, I don't believe. Oh, it did, but this has an error with it. Ah, okay. The total profit measure. Interesting, it didn't capture the brackets on that. So that I think it should automatically add those. That must have been something changed here in reaching that tool. So something happened. I either did something wrong or I didn't add the braces around the total profit name of the table. I might need to have added that in the template file. We just delete this real quick. I'm going to try it. Delete it. The model. I'm going to try it, doing it one more time here. Since I still have it up on my template generator, hopefully. Where did it go? Here it is. I'm going to modify this slightly. So we know that this one needs to have braces around it. So I will add the braces for parameter 1. And I will not name this thing YTD or YTD. So this will be year to date. And I don't want to do any fancy replacing. So everything looks fine. Okay, we'll try this again. Hopefully this works better the second time through. I'll go back over to DAX generator. I'll grab my new template, drop it in. Sure, overwrite it. All right, so it overwrote the parameter. We'll go ahead and grab the measure name. So the measure name is total profit. The table name is now DAX sales date. We're going to generate the template. Okay, this looks a little bit better. Year to date is now correct. Total year to date, total profit is in the brackets because that is a measure, so that is correct now. And I now have my fact sales date as the correct option. All right, this looks correct now. So I'm going to create or update, put it in my fact sales table. It has been added. Let's go back to the Power BI data model. Year to date, there it is. All right, so that was how we made the template. So we're able to parameterize those two options, pick things from the data model, and have those automatically generated. So now if I go back over to my tables, let's get rid of the old measure here and let's add our new one. And we can see that the measure is in fact working correctly. Let me get rid of this other one here. There we go. So this is now calculating, hopefully, the year-to-date type calculations. Keeps increasing. So my year-to-date formula might be wrong. Doesn't look like it's calculating that exactly correct. But it's doing something. So we'll call it. Michael's not the greatest at writing year-to-date calculations, I guess, apparently in this example. But that's the cost of doing live demos. So with that, that's kind of the wrap-up of the whole thing. The one other thing I'd like to show you is just there's some other really interesting templates in here. I know we got like 2 minutes left, so I will be mindful of your time. So let me get out of a couple things here. I have this one called Star Model. Oh, just kidding. That's not what I wanted. Just get out of there. I want to go rating scale 1 to 5. So another template that was made, and this was made by Chris Webb, I believe, where he took text characters and made a star rating model from 1 to 5. So here's an example where he uses the star function, stars and repeating unicar, all this junk, right? Code that you don't want to have to rewrite every single time. But basically he makes a table here that you have these input fields and then you have a score 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 3, and it produces a text column that is a bunch of stars. So let's build our own here. Let's go drop this in here like this. Let's go back over to the template files. So here in the template files, go back into Power BI side tools, more, DAX generator. We pull this thing up. We go down here to example files. So we have this rating stars 1 to 5 example. We pick out the column we're going to be using. So it's the column called score. So I'll go click that star column. We'll go click the column called, oops, hold on. I'm in this wrong model right now. Close this all down. I can see a problem about to occur. It says I'm still connected to the star model, so I want to get out of that because I've already created a new data model here. So I'm going to go back to external tools, open up Power BI side tools. There we go. New port number and new table. Yep, that's what we want. Next generator. Go back up to our star rating 1 through 5. There's our star column. We'll pick our column called score. It will then generate our code. We'll hit generate. There we go. All this code is now being generated for us, and we have the restaurant's score column being added, and it does all the calculations for us. Our count equals 5. All right, create or update. Let's put it in. Do we have a column called? We already have. Okay. It's going to freak out here because I already have a measure called stars. So let me go back here. I'm going to just change the name of the column here. Stars number 2. generate, create or update, restaurants, boom. There we go. Code has been added. We have our stars number 2 column, drop it in there and boom, we've got stars. So it's that easy. We have examples out there. And so the last piece of all this is kind of cool. This is a little bit more elaborate, but now you don't have to build the measures. Someone else in the community can go build them and you can start trying to apply them into your data models. The last thing I'll point out here is, where do you get all these rich templates? How do we get to this information? Well, we've already made a Git repo for you at the Power BI Tips repositories. We have one called DAX Templates. It's a public library. We already have a number of contributors contributing to it. We've got well over 100 measures now. Feel free to go make your own. Submit pull requests if you want to add your own code in here as well. We're looking for more contributions from the community. There's a lot of rich things in here. We have a great README file that tells you how to do it. But inside here, you'll go into the folder called templates. And then here's all the different templates we have. You can do ones for filters, and you can look at the JSON code that's in there. And here's the templates that are being made. So with that, it's kind of open source. We're going to try and do better, more work around building more templates. I have visions, grandiose visions in the future of having like a code jam session where we all get on a Teams call and everyone starts building some measures and figuring things out, and we kind of contribute large quantities of code back to this library. But at some point, I'd hope to add all these templates into the gallery.powerbi.tips so you can go download them easily off the website. And we are 2 minutes over, so sorry about being 2 minutes over.
No problem at all. No need to apologize when you're sharing such rich knowledge with the community there, Mike. Absolutely fantastic session.
Cool.
Chocked full of information that we're all going to take away, and I'm sure the DAX generator is going to be used furiously this evening.
I hope so.
We do have one final question.
Yeah.
So you may remember David Pruitt. He asked for the example of using a DAX measure as a dependency within DAX generator.
Yeah.
He wants to extend that slightly. So in his example, if he wants to have gross margin, he's going to want to have sales and cost of goods to be determined first. Is there any way to do all 3 measures in one fell swoop?
Yes. So this is where the encoding things comes into play. So here, I'm going to zoom out here just a little bit so you can see a bit more of the picture here. I did an example around one encoding, but there's no reason you can't define the measure first and then reuse it again. So I'm going to hack together something again. Again, this is, bear in mind, I'm just hacking some stuff together, right? So let's just say we're going to define 2 measures and then use it or define 1 measure and use it in another measure, right? So you know what? I'm going to wing it here. I'm going to think I know how to do all this in my head. Let's just try and build it all from scratch. So let me refresh the page here. We're going to start from scratch. This is going to be multiple measures creation. Okay. In this example, we're going to have parameter number 1. Parameter 1 would likely be a column name. So we're going to make a measure like sum of some column. So this will be parameter 1. This will be table, and then it'll be like column. So I like using that kind of syntax so I can read it easily. This is going to be a string value, and this will be a table column input value. So that'll be my input value here. The next thing we'll do is we need another parameter. So let's first build our first equation, I guess. This will be the simple sum. Okay, and then here we'll just do equals sum of, and then now we got to go grab our parameter. So we're going to go grab parameter 1 like this, and then close that off. Okay, this is our first encoding. So we're going to make this first one here, and then we may need other code to write the other measure. So there's another dependency on this, right? I want to reuse this one. So what you can do here, instead of saying simple sum as the name of the measure, you could actually make that another parameter. So I'm going to say another parameter, and this is going to be parameter number 2, and this will be measure name here. And now what I'll do is I'll grab this part, simple sum. I'll cut him out of there. I'll put that in as my default value now, because that's what we're going to use for the name of the measure. And now what we can do is we can take parameter number 2 and add that directly to the name here. Okay. So now what we've done is we've been able to parameterize the name of the measure that we're going to be using down below, which is kind of pretty cool. what we're going to be using here. So we'll say this is going to be a string, and this will just be a user input value. User input from that one. That's what I want. Okay. Now, maybe we want another encoding, right? We want to reuse this measure. So the reason we're parameterizing this is like, this is the measure name we had previously. I want to reuse that again in something else that we're going to build. Again, this DAX statement is not rocket science, or I'm not going to make it very hard here. We can add a secondary encoding. So now this one could be, I'm going to call it, for lack of better terms, a calculate statement. Okay, like this. Now in this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go equals, and then I'm going to use the function calculate. And now I want to reference the measure that was above earlier in our reference. So I'll put the braces for the measure name. And then in here, I'm going to add in my previous parameter. So we're going to say parameter 2. So now I can encode this one like so. And then you could say whatever you want. The filter options or whatever. There might be a filter command here, something like that. I don't know. I'm going to leave it blank for now. But now you can see, if I look at the syntax on the right-hand side, I've now been able to make 2 parameters, one for the column name, one for the name of the measure, and then I can define that as an input parameter that I can then reuse in the second DAX statement. So this is how you would stack up, I need to make a simple sum, and then I need to make a calculate statement, and then I need, and then I need, and then I need. You can continually stack this and can build multiple expressions. So you can keep going and building more and more things here. This will be formatted as decimal number. No, yes. Say hide measure by default, no. This is going to be decimal number, no, yes. And with this, now you've got all the parameters configured for making 2 measures. And so our goal here, I mean, you could even do some things where you have like enter a column and make 5 measures at once, or you can do what we do here is start stacking those measures together, and now it will then iterate its way through each of the encodings, making 1 measure at a time. So I think that answers your question. Yes, it is possible. The thing that's not implemented yet, which we're working on right now, is the ability to run multiple encodings from DAX Generator. So right now, the templates define it because we needed the template to be able to do the thing first. We need DAX Generator to acknowledge that there's multiple encodings happening and then iterate through all of them. So you define the parameters and hit go, and it will run through 1 encoding at a time until it builds everything for you. So that's the part we're still working on. So yes, it's coming. It's not quite there yet, but the intent of what we've built is parameterize everything, build multiple things. And if you think with me for a moment here, you could build something like add a date table, add a bunch of calculations that use the newly created date table, sums or year-to-dates or month-to-dates, calculations that are based on a column or measure that you pre-build. So you could pre-build a lot of things in a data table based on a column name or 2, add a date table, take the column names, make some sums, add them to folders, all kinds of rich things that are all handled with this tool.
Excellent, thank you. I can see in the Q&A that David is very, very happy, and he thanks you for going through that as well, Mike.
Good.
We do have, I lied previously, I apologize. We have one final question from Dennis.
Yeah, sure.
And this one is, can I format a measure in DAX Generator with DAX Formatter?
Ooh, good question. I do think that's available. Let me just double check. I don't want to say yes 100% before I speak here. I go back into side tools. If it's not there yet, that would be a good feature request we could add here. So if I hit generate here, I don't believe. I don't think there's a button to format this before we run it into the data model. But I do believe, let's see here, I think Side Tools actually has another external tools manager, DAX generator. I thought Side Tools had another formatting feature, so I don't think so. But there are other external tools that do that for you. So you could inject the DAX, and then you can run another tool, another external tool that will actually run all of that, I believe. So to point this out here real quick, there are other, so if you're using Business Ops already, you already by default have this installed on your machine. You go to add external tools. You can go down to, see here, Davis Zhang. He has a DAX beautifier tool that he uses. And the DAX beautifier tool will actually go through and format all of your DAX inside your statements here. So this is my nasty DAX statement here. I should be able to go through that external tool and hit DAX Beautifier, and it will ask me hopefully a couple questions, and it will reformat my DAX. And if it made any changes, it added some spaces down here below at the bottom. So this kind of went through and reformat, and that does use the DAX formatter program. So I don't think Tax Generator does that automatically, but that would be a good idea, and maybe we will add that as a feature backlog item.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. And that's all of our questions so far for this session.
Awesome. Well, thank you all very much. It's been very good. Appreciate the audience. We had like a good number of people. I saw like 40-some people. So thank you all for showing up. I appreciate your time. Hopefully this will save you. Hopefully you're spending your time with me for about an hour will save you 10, 20, hundreds of hours in a year in the future. So hopefully this will help you build DAX faster in the future.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mike. It's been a great pleasure having you with us, joining us here at the Microsoft Power BI UK user group. Like I mentioned, you've gone through a plethora of information in this session, which is going to save not only me time, but I'm sure everybody that's going to watch this video time as well. So thank you very much. And of course, thank you very much to the community for joining us in this session. I will say thank you as well to our sponsors, Onyx Data. And you could have been anywhere in the world, but you've been here with us at the Microsoft Power BI UK user group, and we'll see you again next week. Take care. Stay safe.